Hello and welcome back to The Vacant Light. Today I'm reviewing an album called Death's Tyranny from a band called Uncreation's Dawn. This band is from Finland and is a fairly unknown black metal band, although they've been around for quite a few years. The band is currently signed to Northern Heritage Records, which is one of my personal favorite record labels. And the band was known at some point as Uncelestial as well, but is currently known as Uncreation's Dawn. This band, although they do possess the ability to produce very technical and complex music, choose to instead, for the most part, present music that's very aggressive and raw and has a very angry quality to it. And generally, that's what you're going to get on this record. The vocals, for the most part, are very low in tone and not quite as raspy as maybe some other black metal vocalists out there. And I'd like to note that what's interesting about this release in terms of the vocals is that the vocals themselves are not always, or pretty much never, at the forefront of the music, and they tend to take a backseat to the instrumentation, which is really the focus. And generally the focus on this release is the guitar playing and the drumming. The guitar playing does take some influence from the traditional style of black metal. Just like the vocals, it's pretty echoey and distorted. And although it does take that influence, the guitars tend to be quite sludgy and not quite as high-pitched and distinctly distorted in that same traditional way compared to earlier black metal acts from your classic 90s and late 80s black metal material. So that's kind of the interesting take that this band has on the black metal sound and style. There are some parts where, for example, on the closing track called Strangulation, you can actually hear some very intricate and some very well-detailed and well-written guitar parts that step far beyond the scope of what black metal typically entails. But what you'll actually get for the majority of the record is very raw, very aggressive, echoey and sludgy guitar parts. One thing I did find interesting is that the band does include quite a lot of guitar solos on this record. And the guitar solos are quite well done, but at the same time they don't have a setup where the guitar solos are always a lot louder than the rest of the band. They actually flow quite well into the main core of the music, which I quite enjoyed on this record. As with most black metal releases, the bass playing is really not the key factor in the writing or the music itself. It does add to that layer of sludge that you'll hear on the record, but you're not going to hear any really interesting bass parts or anything of that nature. And finally, the drumming here is quite well done, and although for the most part it's very straightforward and aggressive, there are a couple of points on the record where you can hear some intricate cymbal work, and you can also hear that the drummer actually knows how to use his toms quite well, which actually creates a bit of a tribal effect, which really adds a little bit to the mix on a couple of tracks. But really, again, the band makes a conscious decision to play straightforward, angry, aggressive music that may alienate people looking for something that's more progressive in approach or more modern sounding. The other key thing that the band does is, in its sort of interlude style tracks, such as the opener, you can actually hear a bit of actually clean piano playing, quite unusual, and it does possess a certain level of the lack of melody to it, which is an interesting take on a piece of music that uses traditional, almost like classical music values. Somehow it sounds like zombies at a piano recital, if I can explain it in that way the best that I can. So I really like that little bit of spin that they put on their music. And that's what this band really does, is they take elements from well-known styles of music, primarily black metal, but in their interludes a little bit of classical and a little bit of external musical sources. And they put just a little bit of spin on it to add a little bit of flavor without stepping too far outside of what you would expect on this type of a record. So for that, I really like to say that Uncreation's Dawn's record here, called Death's Tyranny, their second LP as far as I'm aware, is a great album to listen to if you're looking for something that, number one, is very raw and visceral and will not take you to places you're unfamiliar with, but also, number two, will give a little bit of a spin or a little bit of a tweak on musical values that you're familiar with. Now, with that said, if you're looking for music that is very progressive and really modern sounding, this is not going to do that for you. If you're looking for tracks that are going to sound very diverse and very different from one another, again, this album will not do that for you. with a couple of notable exceptions like the intro and the closing track. And my favorite track off this release is probably Luciferian Conquest, just because it really captures that energy on the record that you'll hear through most of the tracks, and it really presents it in almost a little bit of a catchy way. But for the most part, the songs on here are not going to be catchy. There's almost a general lack of melody on the record, instead using more just straight aggression and straight anger to make something that's heavy, something that's sludgy, and something that you'll enjoy with your fist pumping all the way through the record. But when it's said and done, I still don't find that I listen to this record as much as some of my other black metal albums, just because it's not quite as memorable. It's really a rush of aggression, and once it's over, then you'll feel like you're ready to move on to something else. Thanks a lot for watching this video, and goodbye.